Welcome back. I'm here with you with another episode, and with that, I've got more stories and more books for you. And as you know, this week our theme is on tea or chai. So I hope all the tea lovers out there they are going to enjoy this week's episodes, and you might want to check out the previous episode that we published yesterday, where I talked about the fundamental idea behind the philosophy of tea. And also, I would encourage you to read a book called The Tea Philosophy. If you are on Kindle, you can easily download it there. So that book is really a short one, and it'll tell you a lot of interesting stuff about tea. And coming back to today I'm going to go back in the history and even before history. And as you know, before history there comes the mythology, because that's really the strange thing about the human societies, that the origins that you find in almost every subject, they are obscured, they are not really clear. And what you find is really the myths and legends. And interestingly, that's also the case with tea. And tea, as we all know, it originated in the Asian cultures, in China and Japan. And therefore, when we talk about its early history and the folklore around it, we find a lot of interesting myths, interesting mythological stories, which involve the idea of tea, and particularly the origins of tea. Where did it come from? And most of these legends will tell you that it was a divine drink and therefore it came from the heavens. So these are the stories I'm going to narrate to you first. So the first story that I have for you is about Bodhidharma and his meditations. And I'm sure many of you would be familiar with this particular story, because this is quite popular in the Asian cultures. So those of you who don't know, Bodhidharma, he was an ancient Buddhist monk. He was from India, and he was among the first Buddhist monks from India to travel to China. And although you don't find much of the record in the history books, but what we have, as I said, is mostly the myths and legends. He was also the person, Bodhidharma, who spread the idea of Buddhism, and then he went on to found the school of Zennism. So that's what is attributed to him, and what's more is that he's also attributed with the idea of inventing the tea. So let's dive straight into the myth or the story here. So legend says that once upon a time, Bodhidharma, he was sitting in front of a cave, and he decided to meditate for a really, really long time. And you know how long? He meditated, in fact, for 9 years. And that's how long it went. So in the beginning, people were making fun of him and they were ridiculing him. But as the time went by, especially after the third or the fourth year, they didn't really do that, because what they saw in front of them was a man who was enjoying his stillness, who was not really responding to them, and who was in peace, complete peace. So the same people who were earlier ridiculing him, they started seeking his wisdom. They started asking him a lot of questions. So that's what he would do. He would attend to their questions, and then he would go back to the meditation. And he talked about a lot of things. He talked about the essence of Buddhism, which was about the seeing of one's suffering, and then different paths of overcoming it. And then he also talked about the different metaphors involving the suffering. So he said that how the lotus, the flower, how it rises from the muddy waters and blooms and flourishes. And in the similar way, we can rise from our own suffering and overcome them through meditations. So, once again, what he would do, he would give these lessons and go back to the meditations. And it was during one of these meditation sessions that it is said that he fell asleep. And if you are aware about meditation, the practice, you would know that you're not supposed to sleep, you're supposed to be aware, you're supposed to be well awake while having these spiritual experiences. So he had clearly made a mistake, and what happened was he was very, very upset. In fact, he's so disgusted he became that he went to the other extreme and he cut his eyelids off. And that was his punishment for himself, hoping that it would never happen again, that he would never go back to sleep, especially during the meditation sessions. So now what it is believed that the place where his eyelids landed, a new plant began to grow. It was the tea plant. And now that's how the story goes, that through Bodhidharma, we received this divine gift of the tea plants. So that's the first story, and probably, as I said, the most famous of all. And then there is another legend from China which talks about how Emperor Shennong, he invented this divine drink of tea. Emperor Shennong, once again, he is an emperor whose name you find in the mythology books, not so much in the history books. And he is believed to be the first Yan emperor, and he later became a deity in different folk religions of China and even Vietnam and some other parts of East Asia. So coming back to this story, what the legend says that Shennong invented this tea, and it happened during one of his travels. So he was traveling with his entourage, and along the way they were resting under the shade of a giant tree. And they were resting there, and the emperor felt thirsty. So what his company did was they started boiling water, because these people were very particular about the hygiene. So when they made fire and started preparing the boiled water, what happened was there were a number of herbal plants around them. And suddenly when a gush of wind blew, what happened was some of these leaves, they flew and they fell on the container or the pot. And it was then that this drink was accidentally invented. And at that moment, when the emperor, he felt this strange scent in the air, he tasted the water and he felt really good. And he shouted cha, which literally means godlike. And that's how the cha term from China, and which later became chai in India, that's how it came to be. In some of the other versions, you find that invention wasn't really accidental, but more intentional on the emperor's part. But the rest of the story is pretty much the same. And then we have the third story, which is not really about all kinds of teas, but a very specific kind of tea and its origins. The tea is called tea Kuan, and these days you'd find it in the most exotic sections when you go to buy tea in the market. It's a particular, but as I said, very popular kind of tea, kind of oolong tea. This is a kind of semi-oxidized tea, which is somewhere placed between the green tea and black tea. So it's a very unique form of tea, and a lot of people prefer it. The taste is not the sweetness that you will find in green tea. It won't be there. It's a slightly bitter taste that you have, but It's very good for your skin, for your health, and that's why a lot of people prefer it. So now, coming back to the story, this name itself, Thi Kuan Yin, it comes from the goddess of mercy, which was called Kuan Yin. And this kind of tea was presented as a gift to a farmer who used to maintain this temple of this deity, the deity of mercy, Kuan Yin. So, what happened was inside this temple, there was this huge and elegant iron statue of this deity, and it used to be worshipped by her followers. What happened was one day, and to everyone's surprise, this iron statue, it came alive out of nowhere. And most of the worshippers, they were so spooked, they just ran away. They were fearful for their lives. And except this farmer. This farmer was there, he fell to his knees and he started worshipping that deity that had come alive. And the goddess was impressed. She whispered in his ears. She said that the key to your future, to your happiness, for your good health, for your well being, is just outside this temple. And I'm going to bless you with that. Go and get it, nourish it, and support it. And it will support you back, and it will nourish and support your generations to come. And after listening to her, the farmer was excited, he was happy, and he was also curious. So he went outside and he found a new kind of bush which wasn't there earlier, or maybe it was there and he never quite noticed it. And that was the tea plant, and this particular tea, Thi Kuan Yin, came to be. So that was another legend about tea and the origins of it. But as you know, this is just the mythology, not the history. And for the history, you'll have to wait for the other episode, which will publish tomorrow. And there I'll tell you about the history of it. For now, let's enjoy these stories. And as I said, I'll share the link in the description of our book, The Tea Philosophy. Check it out.